welcome to the I'm Just Saying podcast. I am very privileged to be sitting and speaking with Alicia Whavers. Alicia Whavers and I go back. She is an actor, producer, director, you name it, anything in theater, she is it. She even works for SOPAC, South Orange Performing Arts Center. Very early in her career, started working there and just moved up the ranks, and now she's doing big things. And I'm really pleased to be sitting here speaking with her. Just a little history. I produced a play in 2015. Prior to that, but in 2015, Alicia joined us as one of the characters, Malika, and she really turned that scene out. Boy, it was so great to have her on board, and I have her here today to just talk about theater. I have not neglected speaking about theater, but I have. And so Alicia's going to join me, and we're going to hopefully give some value and just talk about theater as a whole. And I really enjoy speaking with her, and I'm sure someone will get something out of this, and those of us in theater will just enjoy listening. Alicia, what's going on, girl? What you been up to?
Oh my goodness. I've been actually doing a lot recently. I have my own theater company, and we've been, the last 2 months, we've co-produced with another theater company that I've got to be, develop a pretty good relationship with over the course of COVID. Like I half of these people I've been working with for the past year, I've never met in real life.
Wow.
They were friends of friends. And now, we partner. They're called T Squared Production Company.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been partnering with them for February for Black History Month, and then March for Women's History Month. I have a day job. I have a day job and another part-time job. So, balancing that out.
You stay busy. You always.
Do.
Yeah, I always admired that about you. You would have your day job. That's the one that pays the bills. And then it's always seemed like your part-time job was the thing that you love to do.
Yes. So my part-time job, I work with Drew University, so I help teach theater courses to students. And while that's not my end goal, that was definitely part of my vision of how I would, sort of grow as a theater professional. So to be able to work with students, high school students in Newark, which is where I'm from, and help them explore the different sides of theater is just absolutely wonderful. I think definitely, at least when I was growing up, I was very fortunate to come from a very artistic family. Mm-hmm. My dad was a musician. My mother, she's a writer, and she also is a very, very good artist, visual artist. So when I decided I wanted to go into theater, at least for my immediate family, it wasn't like, oh no, but even in school, it definitely was like, I was smart. I had good grades. It's like, oh, do you go into the sciences, go into medicine, go into law, go into something steady and stable and something that will definitely pay back all of your student loans. And I just, I decided not to do that. But yeah, so I love being able to give students a different way of viewing the world that, you don't necessarily have to just, have these expectations put on you to end up in a certain place. And there's a very specific path you have to follow. There's multiple ways to live your life. And, we're told unless you're a basketball player or, a singer or a rapper, you're really not going to get out of the hood. And wanted to show these kids that there's a world of other options. It's just that, a lot of us grew up with limited thinking. So that's another thing I do. I am an ambassador for the Dramatists Guild for New Jersey, more specifically Newark. Mm-hmm. And so the Dramatists Guild is I don't want to quite say union, but a very strong support group for playwrights. Stephen Sondheim was the vice president for years. So we're, it's not just like a little club, like Sondheim was part of it. Lynn Nottage, Susie Laurie Parks, part of it. So I'm one of the New Jersey ambassadors. So I'm actually trying to get a function up for that for April. Very quick turnaround. I decided I wanted to do it yesterday. So I've got like 3 days
Mhm.
to plan it. And then, I'm trying to get my social media buzzing a little bit. So yeah, I definitely stay busy. I don't know why I choose to stay busy.
I
Because
it just there's something in the arts that's very invigorating that once you get going, I don't know what happens. It's almost like there's a motor in your feet or something. You just kind of keep going. And I think also, and I could be wrong, but I think that because plays begin and you go through everything in pre-production and during production, that when it ends, it's a feeling it leaves a lot to be desired. And I think that keeps us going also because for as long as you don't want that end. You know what I mean? Or you make up for it so it doesn't quite seem like that end or it doesn't impact you. Because I've seen some actors when something ends, if they could, I think they run out in the parking lot and just scream because if they really love the production that they were on, and a lot of us, especially as small production companies, when we go for grants, the grant is usually for just that production at
yeah.
best 2 weekends, and so we don't get the long runs where you get into it and really stretch and enjoy. It comes and it goes, and I think keeping busy helps you to forget.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the things that I do a lot of community theater and smaller productions around New Jersey and a little bit in New York. Um, almost all of us have a day job.
Hmm.
And so, it's not like we can do, like they do Broadway, you do 8 weeks, 8 to 10 hour days straight rehearsing, and then you get like however many week run, like a 17-week engagement with the potential to go on. It's like, no, we spend 2 months, 2 hours a day, really sort of stretching out our schedule, sometimes 3 months, to have 2 days on stage
Hmm.
to see it be complete in 2 days. And you're like, 2 months or 3 months feels like forever. But then when you have 4 shows, it's like, did all this work? I
Yeah.
got to meet all these new people, and it's over. But I will say there have been productions where I'm like, oh, thank God it's
It's over.
very
Yes.
that not many productions have caused me to be that way just because I love the process
Hmm.
so much. But that's the thing. I think it's the process more than the actual production of like actually putting the show up. The
Hmm.
process can sometimes be, oh, and especially now during Zoom, I love what I'm doing,
Hmm.
but it's so different, doing things on Zoom is so different, and it feels, I don't know, it feels insubstantial in a way. It feels like I'm not able to do everything. I'm definitely not able to do everything that I would do as an actress or as a director or even as a producer, if we were having live theater with butts and seats and people on stage. So it's like, the process to get to a final production that's still not going to feel like a final production,
Hmm.
um, you know, is like, I'm glad we did that, but God, I really don't want to have to stare at shoulders and heads anymore. I'm tired. I'm
I
tired.
know. And so you work both ends. You work am I correct? You just correct me anywhere I'm wrong. You work for a theater company, right?
Mhm.
And then also you're an actor and you've also put on some other hats as well.
Yes. So I work more specifically for a performing arts center,
Hmm.
and they mainly music, but they do a whole bunch of other things. And I started hosting through my day job, uh, a trivia night, which I actually find it's a breath of fresh air. It's something completely different. So I guess I can add host to my new hat bag.
Hmm.
I am an actress. That's sort of where I've always been, and that's being up on stage was the beginning of my love of theater. I am a playwright, which led me to the Dramatist Guild, and eventually somebody nominated me to run for the regional rep. I didn't get it, but I was asked to be an ambassador. And playwriting playwriting is so interesting to me because I think my love of theater stems from my love of stories.
Mm-hmm.
And playwriting is sort of part of both worlds. I produce. I started my own theater company in 2019 with my sister. It's called Unidentified Stages. We're a baby company. And of course, right when we were like gathering steam, the pandemic hit. We started December of 2019. So we had, like 3 months of physical things, and then boom, pandemic. And so with that, I direct, I produce, I write. I actually write for it as well. I've written 2 pieces for the works that we have done, and I'm working on a third, and hopefully we get it done in April.
Mm-hmm.
And besides that, I sing.
I wasn't surprised that you sing, but it was a pleasant the first time I heard it a few years ago.
Oh
And
yeah.
I remember sitting there and trying to hold in from crying. I'm actually fanning my face right now. Just trying to hold in from crying because I remember when you came on board, I know you had already had training and everything, but you were one of those people who always believed in nurturing your craft, honing your craft, and always like just being better and doing better and adding more things, and like a true artist. And I can appreciate that. And I have some people that I push and they don't understand why, and I think they kind of feel like, well, who the hell is she, like? But my thing is, there's a difference between someone who was invited to be in a play and someone who had training or who is trained. And I try to take those who have never had training, or who may have just had one or two little workshops. I try to encourage them because I see the difference. As a producer, a director, I see the difference. And if you see something in them, you know that that training can only make it better. And it's hard to get them to see that. And so, but when I work with someone like you, I always say to myself, like, wow, if they could just see, what I'm talking about, then they'll realize the impact that, training has. It's with anything else. Like, you may know how to do it well, right? Like even riding a bike, you may know how to get
Mhm.
from here to the corner wobbling, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if someone shows you how to ride it, it could just be a smooth ride. And
Yeah.
so, and like I said, you were one of those people. So it made me feel really good to see you, do the singing, like, and you did your freaking thing. I was angry that I did not film it. You know what I mean? Because that's something I would have loved to just have, like, to be able to look at from time to time. And so that leads me to something that I wanted to say, and I think I had mentioned it to you a while ago, but it's been a couple of years now, so you may have forgotten. But I had written a one woman show for you. And you remember me mentioning that to
I
you?
do. I do.
Yeah, and I didn't finish it because, I had to go into film, and that was only because of money. Because one thing I will say, theater embraced me. Getting my master's in theater was probably the best thing I ever did because theater really embraces me. The only problem with theater, it's like that broke boyfriend.
It has, we are the broke boyfriend. We are the forgotten stepchild. And I'm in
Yeah,
nonprofit theater. So we are the
yeah.
forgotten stepchild.
Hmm.
We get no money.
Hmm.
And it's like, do you know how much it costs?
Yeah. And so the profit is not really all of that. Like, there's certain theaters I won't even name, but there's certain ones that are really good and they help people to get their start. And I really wanted to, do something at those theaters right here in Jersey. There's a couple in New York as well. But
Mhm.
by the time you pay everybody, including the theater, your profit was like anywhere from a few hundred to 1,000. I think one time I did the budget, and the most my profit would have been was 1,200. And I don't usually pay myself. I usually just take it and put it towards the next project.
Mhm.
And so I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I would have made a couple more $100 going somewhere else. And I did. I mean, like I said, my career in theater would have probably advanced a lot more had I going to those particular theaters because of their connects. But
Mm-hmm.
at the time, I just needed to pay my actors something
Yeah.
decent and not, kind of like, okay, here's like a little something.
Mm-hmm.
So I made that choice. But theater overall has always embraced me, just like it's embraced you and all of us. The problem is that it does not pay the bills.
It doesn't. I mean, you have to get to a very specific level or find a very
Hmm.
specific niche to be able to do it full time. And, there are many times when I think about like what would, I'm 28 now. I've been doing theater for, you know, over a decade and a half. I've been doing professional theater for over a decade. And I think, like what would happen to me if I were to just quit my job, spend 6 months just beating the pavement
Hmm.
and auditioning and just sort of living that artist life. And, I think this happens to a lot of theater people is like we find a job that's comfortable, that pays the bills,
Hmm.
and then we squeeze theater in.
Yeah.
Um, but the thing is like the more and more that I'm finding more avenues to do theater, like the hungrier I am for it.
Hmm.
And who knows who's to say, now I have a decent full-time job. I was very lucky not to lose my job during the pandemic. Um, and I'm forever grateful for that. But I'm also seeing people who were able to take their time off from work really, really evolve their craft in a different way than I have been able to.
Hmm.
Um, and like it's a double-sided coin. It's like,
Yeah.
yes, I have comfort and I have financial stability and I'm able to, live that way. But in a lot of ways, I've sort of had to, I feel like half do what I love to do so I could make sure that I'm doing, I'm paying the bills.
Yeah.
So who knows, maybe that hunger will overtake me. I'm still young. That hunger will
Yeah.
overtake me and I'm gonna, just, like, no, we're gonna hop in the car 6 months, and see where it takes me. But yeah, there is very little money in theater.
Mhm.
And for when you first met me, I was working like 5 part-time jobs,
I remember.
and I realized that I really, really needed training. That if I really wanted to do something more, I would have to sort of go beyond what I learned in college just a little bit to specialize a little bit or find out more. And I was hungry for it, and even when you don't have money, uh, read plays, try and figure out, like, find a group of playwrights who are willing to let you experiment. And that's what my theater company does. It's like, hey, you have a play, you don't, you're not ready to have it be seen by the world yet. You want some help with it. You want to know about characterization you've never written before. You want a safe space. That's what my theater company does. And it also provides a safe space for actors and directors as well for you to
That's
experiment and
great.
have fun. Um, but like, read plays. If you, especially, you have to put your focus elsewhere. Like, I have a full-time job. That's where my focus is for at least 40 hours out of the week. It's like, okay, I actually just had 2 new plays delivered to me last week. Um, watch interviews with artists who you love. Listen to new things, try new things. Doesn't cost a lot of money to hop on the internet and just research.
Exactly. So, what would you say to those people who someone says you're a natural actor?
Yeah. That's what I was told. I was told very much that I was a natural actor by multiple people. Um, Not to rest on being told you're a natural actor.
Hmm.
Don't rest on it. Um, you can, there's people who are natural and there's people who are trained. And then there's people who are natural who get trained. Um,
Tell them, Alicia. Tell them. Say it again.
there's natural people who you can always be trained. And I'm not saying that if you're strictly trained, if you've never been told you're a natural actor, that doesn't make you any less. What I'm saying is, it's like, don't rest on pretty. Don't rest on just being smart. Don't rest on this one pillar that people have built you up to be, because if it's one pillar, that one pillar can crumble.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of what happened to me. It's like, okay, I'm natural, but like I felt like I was hitting a wall with the roles I was doing. I felt like I was approaching everything in the same way, which is fine, but because I wasn't aware of all of these techniques, I wasn't aware of, okay, like let's approach this character differently. Um, how do you approach somebody who's very similar to you? Like, are you just going to be yourself up on stage? How are you going to make nuances for that character, or the opposite? How do you approach somebody who has nothing to do with you? And you know, it's like a puzzle. For me, I think of approaching a character as like a puzzle. I like to find out all the information that I can about them. Then, I sort of supplement things with how, I read. I'm always being told, go back to the text, go back to the text. So let's go with I played Julius Caesar last year. So Julius Caesar is actually a historical figure. There's known things about him. And of course, there's the play by Shakespeare. But there's so much, like, what was his favorite color? Like things like that. How did he walk? Did he like touching people around him before he was crowned? Like things like that.
It's
That'll
home,
really.
it's homework to be done.
Yeah, there's a lot of homework that has to be done, and that's going to separate you from somebody who's able to read a monologue or act in a scene very well. And that's what I was doing. It's like, okay, I read this monologue, I'm embodying the character in this moment. Great, but there's so much behind why you chose the clothes you chose to wear today, right? Mm-hmm. And so having that knowledge behind why your character is wearing that particular outfit or did that particular thing is going to inform your character in a way that transforms them. And it may not be noticeable to you, mm-hmm. but it definitely is going to be noticeable to other people. So yeah, if you're a natural actor, that's great. But don't rest on it. Get some training. Training's expensive. I understand that. So, take what lessons you can. I rest on a barter system in the theater. It's like, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Let's come up with something, or let's figure out how I can learn from you and what you can learn from me. But yeah, don't rest on just being a natural actor. It's good to be a natural, it's good to be trained, but if you can be both, if you're trained and you like start to naturally embody certain things and you're starting to get it, great, but don't rest on it.
So it's funny that you say that, because I have spoken to, again, it's early in the morning, so I almost said I have spoke. Like I was in a Shakespeare play. I spoke to a few actors, and over the years, I've been directing since like early 2000, but it started in film, and then of course I polished up my directing skills in theater. So that's been about almost 10 years now. Mm-hmm. But I found with actors, even those who have trained, that when I say to them, when I ask them, how do you break down your script? They usually do not know. And these are people who have gone, I won't even mention the schools, but they've gone to schools where they've paid thousands of dollars. Yes. And they'll tell me they don't know how to. And then they'll say, some of them will say, well, it's been a while, show me, how to break down a script, or show me what you know. And I guess they kind of feel bad because they probably had heard it somewhere, mm-hmm. about breaking down a script. And it was like that little, I guess
sorry.
That's fine.
I got my pandemic, you're home with the family, and I got dogs running around.
It's fine. But they probably realize that they have some, like, as I say, Swiss cheese holes in their education or their training. And so I end up showing them how to break it down. And I notice a whole new actor. And I always feel horrible because I know my experience in going to school. I love Montclair State University, but I've had
Mm-hmm.
my little issues where, for the most part, yes, overall it was great. But I've had my little issues where certain things that I should have learned fell through the cracks. And so I can empathize. Um, but how do you break down a script? Like, how do you, because and for those who don't know out there, I have a two-part question. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when you go home with the script and you start doing your homework, right? You do your homework on the script so that you can find character, so that you can get the mood of what's happening. I always tell those who are new to theater or even acting, the first time that you read the script is for you to learn the world of the play or the world of the script. The second
Mm-hmm.
time that you read it is so that you can learn the other characters you're going to be dealing with. The third time that you read the script is for your character, right? To begin to really learn and get into your character. And I've had people say, well, why in that order? Why wouldn't I learn my character first? And I said, because you're going to spend most of your time learning your character. You don't want to break away from that once you get started. You want to go in.
Mm-hmm.
But if you learn the world and then you learn the other characters you have to deal with, when you learn your character, you begin to wonder, how do you deal with this person? How do you deal with that person? Because it'll be different because your character has different relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I tell them about, all of that, and then I say, okay, so now, go and break down your go down no go break down the script so that you can find character. So those are two things that I want to ask you about. How do you begin to break down your script? Because you can take what you were trained and then you can make it your own because something
Mm-hmm.
worked better for you. But at least the training on how to break down the script gives you a start, right? To know what
Yeah.
you do. So how do you break down your script?
Oh, okay. So I'm going to preface this really quickly by saying I was an English and theater major in college. Like I said, my love of stories, I think, drew me to theater. And so because I have such a strong English literary background, that's actually sort of where I start. So, um and in the same way I learned the world of the play. So I over the course of doing any role, I probably read the play 20 plus times, but I start and I just read it. I am a horrible reader in the fact that I will take notes no matter what. Like even now when I read books, if I'm like, oh man, I'm really into this, but I really want to know more, I'll like take a picture of that section on my phone. So
Mhm.
it's like, okay, I can get back to that. So first I just read the script and I have questions written down, and I do my best to keep that in the back of my head, but I usually take some notes on a separate book. I have a separate book. Um, uh, Actually, I have one right here because I was just doing something. Um, but I usually have a composition notebook,
Mhm.
and I can do 2 to 3 productions per notebook, and then I just write down questions, and notes and stuff. So as I read it the first time, just okay, anything that confused me, anything that I need to double check, anything that stood out to me, a quote that I really like. I just enjoy it purely as reading a play. The second time I read it, I go through, I will highlight my characters' lines, things like that. I really actually start to make note of where they are in the play. Because, sometimes when you first read a play, it's just like, okay, we're in a different place. It's a coffee shop, yada, yada, yada. And you go through it. Like, oh no, they're at a coffee shop. They're specifically sitting at a bar. Um, they're looking out the window, things like that. I start to get a little bit more of the environment. And then that's when I might actually, depending on how familiar I am with the play, if it's a play that I've read before, I might start a little bit sooner than if it wasn't. That's when I start to sort of say the words out loud, that my character speaks, so I can sort of try and find their voice. I think it's very important to find 2 things about your character: their voice and their walk.
Yes.
And once you sort of find that out, it's a little bit, at least for me, it's a little bit easier to get into the characterizations of what they do, how they sit, and things like that. Um, and then after that, I will go and I will write in the book all of my characters' lines. And then I will put them into context in my own words. Or not, sorry, let me say this. If it's Shakespeare, I will translate directly into my own words, depending on how weird I would say it sounds to the modern ear. I have a huge background in Shakespeare, so for the most part, I'm able to read it and I'm able to get it first read around. But let's say it's a new play like Top Dog Underdog by Susan Laurie Parks that I actually just directed. I'll sort of paraphrase what's going on, and I want to know, these are the things that I want to know, and I make note of is, who is my character talking to, where my character is saying this, why they're saying this at this point in time. And that's sort of the most important one to me initially, is why are they saying this? Especially if it seems like it's coming out of left field. Like, normal people don't just start to monologue in the middle middle of their day. So it's like, okay, there's a monologue here. This means something. Why are we doing that?
I think that that's really important, because I'm just putting myself in the space of a director. That's one less lesson that I have to teach. Not even teach. I'm sorry. I work with a lot of new actors, so that I have my brain sometimes. But that's one less thing I have to worry about when the actor is trained and they know that part of their homework is to figure out why. Like, that is important for everything, because, like you said, you're not just spazzing on the other character for no reason. There's a reason, and once you tune into the why, then not only do you know what you're doing, but you know why you're doing, and you know how to do it. The only thing is when you may say to the director, okay, so when she says this and I get angry, how angry am I? Am I like, fly over the cuckoo's nest angry, or am I a little reserved? And a lot of that you can answer yourself because you started learning about your character.
Yes. Always, you have to know why they're saying it, and why they're saying it, and why are they choosing to say it now. Those are very, very important things. And sort of, once I get that basis done, I'm able to flesh out the character. That's when I as a director, I like to give my actors freedom. But as an actress, I've had directors who are like, yeah, go nuts. I've had directors who haven't said a word to me, and they're like, okay, good job. Or, even worse, they're just like, okay, you did that, and then move on. And then I've had directors who are very, very specific. And, you don't want to be combative with your director unless, it's something.
Tell them, please.
You don't want to be combative with your director unless it's something that I have been not combative, but I've been very firm in what I believe a character should be doing, because I felt like I've lived the character a little bit more than the director observing me has. And it's like, I'm sorry, but like, my character would not yell this at this moment. And here's the thing, I've learned to block, okay, I wouldn't yell at this moment, or I don't do that, versus my character wouldn't yell in this moment, or my character wouldn't do that. I don't mind if I'm uncomfortable, but if it makes my character uncomfortable and that's not what they would do, that's when I feel like, okay, I got to really, let me see if I can explain this. And most of the time, talking with the director, and I don't necessarily do it like in rehearsal. I'll go to them after. I'll send an email, just say, hey, I feel really strongly about this. Is this something that we can just experiment in? We don't have to do it in rehearsal. I'm willing to, meet outside. Let's talk about this.
And I've learned, so if any directors out there that are new, those who've been there before. I learned that, and I had a professor whenever I was doing a production, even after I graduated, because I keep in touch with all my professors. Just another hint for everybody.
Right.
And I will email my professors and ask a question. And so I remember after emailing my professor a couple of times, she said to me, "The problem is, Andrea, and it keeps going back to the same thing. When you had your initial meeting with them, you were supposed to let them know the rules or how you go about doing things, and you skipped past it because you wanted to get to the good stuff."
Mm-hmm.
He says so they have no parameters to go by now. And so that and I it wasn't so much that I wanted to get to the good stuff. I just wanted everybody to naturally be professional. But I
Mm-hmm.
found that you do have to say, okay, here's what's happening, here's what I expect, here's what I'm going to give you and what you can expect from me, etc. And so one of those things would be that I always say to people, to actors, is there's a script, right? It is a blueprint. We're going to go by the blueprint because it's going to get us to where we need to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you, sometimes I'll say take liberties. And then some people will say, well, am I able to take liberties as well? And I'll say no, because that particular character may have such a personality that they will say this, and I need you to follow that, right? But then
Mm-hmm.
certain characters, like take for example Shay, right, from
Mm-hmm.
Law, you would give them the room because they may get so in the moment of flying off the cuckoo's nest or misbehaving during group therapy or wherever, that you say, if it comes to you, go with it. Of course, don't go bananas and straight too far off the blueprint,
Mm-hmm.
but take liberties. And then sometimes in rehearsal, I've always said, if you feel something, ask me, let's try it. Can we try something? And I'll tell you, sure, come on. And then I'll say whether it fits or not. Sometimes I may even ask because after a certain point, I personally, and I don't know how many other directors believe this, but after a certain point, I believe that the actor knows more about the character than I do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely do.
Yeah,
Um, just because, and again, it's because that's what that actor's job is to do, is to focus on that character. Um, but yeah, I mean, like everybody has their own process, but I continuously say, go back to the text.
exactly.
And don't get me wrong, we're only human. There's some texts out there that I'm like, I'm confused. I don't know what's going on. I
Hmm.
don't know what happened. Um, and again, and I think it's different as a player to understand that it's like, I'm sure it's happened to you. You've written something,
Hmm.
and then there's a person who comes and does your character completely different. And
Hmm.
you're like, that's not in the script. That's good though. Like I didn't see that in the script.
Yeah,
I didn't see that at all.
I had to learn to be open to that. I had a classmate, Stephen, and when I tell you excellent, I've never had anybody make me want to cry before. He wrote a play about these puppets, and it deals with the puppet having problems like a lot of groups, like people of color or gay people,
Mm-hmm.
the problems that they have of just being accepted or whatever. But the way that he did it, it was so great that I cried from my soul, and I almost forgot
Oh.
what I was talking about because I started thinking about the play. But what was I talking about? I really did start getting into.
Oh, a different view on the character you wrote, like somebody performed.
Yes. And so he said to me, because he was a playwright, it was me, it was him, myself, and a few other people that were actual playwrights. Everybody else was either mostly directors or whatever. And he said to me, Andrea, he said, be open to nuances. And I can't remember exact words he said, but he said that and it rung in my head. And so when I began to direct the actors, I began to kind of like really entertain what they were showing me, as far as nuances are concerned. And I began to even respect the word because, see, again, it goes back to, and this is for the writers, you write it, but don't forget it's just a blueprint. And you might
Mm-hmm.
go back to, you may do another production with a whole set of new actors and say, nope, I'm sticking to the script, because those actors just bring forth that something that makes you feel like, no, the script is better. But sometimes you'll have a certain actor. I had that when I did God of Carnage, and of course I didn't write that.
Mm.
I directed it because I had a grant, and I had a play that I wrote that was almost like that. That same four people hold up the entire play. And it was two, in my play, it was two parents that come together because their kids are about to get married and they've never met. And one of them is, upper middle class, acting like they're rich and bougie. And then the other one were just a working class that was doing pretty good by themselves, but they took pride in being a working class. And so all the niceties start off just like in God of Carnage, but then it goes wild, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people lose their top. All the things that they had put behind them as they matured end up coming out. And so the play gets really, wild. And so when I did it, I ended up doing God of Carnage because my play was not ready, and I really wanted to do that. And I went to YouTube and I began looking at other plays, and what I found was everybody did it different. I
I
read
know,
it
yeah.
one way, and every director did it different. So one director, the characters were kind of wild, even in the beginning, because it wasn't what they said; it was the way that they said it. It was the blocking and the way that they looked at one another, And
Yeah.
then another play that someone else did, the same play, but they did it to where everyone was composed all the way up until things were about to get a little explosive. And then even then the characters tried to maintain niceties and then they popped. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was different approaches with different directors, but the outcome was always that the niceties went out the window and
Mm-hmm.
the characters ended up explosively yelling at one another until they had to have those beats and moments of silence to gather themselves.
Yeah, God of Carnage is a good example. That's a very
Yeah,
uh
I loved it. Yasmina Reza, shout out to her. I licensed that play. And I tell you, being on Clubhouse, I'm very tempted to do a reading of it. I actually thought to myself, well, hell, maybe I'd push you to finish yours if you do, yours. But I love that I love the ideal of just because, I always write huge.
mm-hmm.
And it eats up the budget. But for some reason, I just like writing big. But I'm trying to actually, over the past few years, even in film, I've been trying to mow down my characters and write smaller, so that I can, focus on making it better instead of making it bigger and better.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard the saying, but like Shakespeare side characters are boring, but Chekhov side characters are the best.
Mm,
Um, I saw this play, this production of Taming of the Shrew at the Globe in London.
mhm,
So of course you're there, and oh my goodness, I feel horrible in forgetting all of the characters' names, but
mhm.
you see
Okay.
Kate, you see Catherine, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's the main thing. She's the shrew woman, and then I believe his name is Petruchio, and you're like, okay, he's the horrible man who's going to come and tame the shrew, right? And that's what you're focused on. And I paid very little attention to the side characters during when I first read that play. And I saw that production, and whoever I believe the main character's main male is Petruchio, whoever his like sidekick sort of character is,
Mhm.
this man stole the show for me.
Wow.
Absolutely stole the show, and I had never read this character in this way. He was the most sardonic, dry humor character. It was like he perfectly embodied the worker who did not want to be there anymore and was like trying to find an excuse to get fired
Wow.
as he was going through this play. And I'm like, this is so much more interesting.
Hmm. Hmm.
So much more interesting, because then when he interacted, when he then did interact with the main characters, you could see that he was doing anything he could just to have some fun, because he was just so over everything.
Hmm.
And before, I had only seen that part of be done by a very earnest, I really want to help my master type thing. So yeah, being open to what other people can do, I think not only will broaden the play, but for me that broadens my world as an actor, because it's like I never would have thought to look at this character that way. Like never in my life would I have thought, oh my god, that works.
And
um
it's important to be open to nuances,
mhm,
in the play, because not only do they bring forth something, I'll tell you something my professor said to me, and I never strayed and I never will. It wasn't a knock on what I do, but I think she just wanted me to see how I write. And she
Mm-hmm.
said, Andrea, because I had like 2 semesters, and by then she had read a lot of my plays, and she said, Andrea, she said, you write like Chekhov. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, because Chekhov will have the characters talk about a certain something, and
Mm-hmm.
they will veer into something else and then come back to the subject. And I said to her, but isn't that how we speak though? Like, who sits there? At least everybody I know will sometimes, talk about what's happening in the news, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they will, say, "Oh, that's a nice dress." Yeah. So anyway, and that's how most of us talk. Like, we can get
Yeah.
distracted, or we can veer off. And so she just looked at me and shook her head, and she said she just never, aside from Chekhov, she just never noticed people writing like that. But I
Mm-hmm.
write realism and naturalism, so I love writing about how people really speak. If they speak like Shakespeare, I don't know who's running around doing that, but if they do, then I feel like I'm obligated to write like that, because I need for people to really know this character and their voice and how they speak, and I need them to engage, and I can't do that if I start writing how I feel the text should be properly lined up and in order. And then you have this monotone character. Who in the world is monotone? Like, we have personalities that shape the way we speak. Like, even myself, someone may say, wait, I just listened to Andrea do a podcast the other day, and that kind of sounds a little on the ghetto side, and then they hear me speaking with you and we're talking about this, and they get confused because nobody speaks monotone. Like, it reminds me of that old hip hop song, I could get with this and I could get with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we come from one place. We learned something. We've been someplace. Look, I was an African American girl who lived in the projects. Matter of fact, people know me by Andrea, but my middle name is Renee. So I was Renee from the projects. And my grandfather was a Baptist minister, so I grew up in the church. Not only did I go to school, but then public school, but at some years I did go to Catholic school. And
Mm.
then I began learning about Islam, and that was when I was young. And then so you see all the things I'm naming, like,
Mm-hmm.
I am like a mixture of a lot of different things that I was exposed to. And so my conversation will vary based on who I speak to. I could be talking to you, and we could be talking on such an I don't want to say academic, but we could be really sitting here and engaging in some peer articles or something that was written on a college or a student level, and then all of a sudden we talk about something that happened in the news, and we sitting up here eating crunchy cheese doodles and this and whatever, and then next thing you know, we're vibing like that. But again, no one speaks one way,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what, and every time I coach, because I also coach writing, I always tell them, is this your character? Or I ask them, is this your character? Like, or is what they're going through such that it makes them just speak on this same like humdrum level?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have interests? Did they just watch TV last night that kind of made them a little tickled? So even though they're mad at their husband for coming home the next day, they're still thinking about the comedy show or whatever they watched last night, loving hip hop or loving basketball. Like, what, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
because why would you want to just have them speaking in one way?
It's so funny that you mentioned that. I just wrote a play and it actually did get accepted for a festival. I just wrote a 15-minute monologue play.
Congrats.
Thank you, thank you. And the main character is African American. There's no gender specified,
Mhm.
but they're in an office setting. And over the course of the play, as they get more and more vulnerable,
Mhm.
their speech pattern and how they speak changes. And that's when the people or the person that they're speaking to, who's presumably white, they get more and more uncomfortable because this is a side of this character they've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And then towards the end of that monologue, that 15-minute monologue, they slowly go back to speaking what is considered proper.
Mm-hmm.
And even myself, like, people, I used to be called names for how I speak. But a lot of people forget that my dad's from Nolens, my mom's from the South Bronx, and I'm from Newark.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I wanted to if I wanted to change my speech, I certainly could. And there are definitely times when I can, but this is how I choose to speak for just the majority of the day. And I understand it's sad. I understand a lot of people are comfortable with how I talk. Um, I also can't be ignorant to the fact that how I am and where I sort of fall on the black scale is a little bit more comforting for other people. And definitely having my tone of voice certainly assists with that. But trust and believe, if I need to, or if I'm comfortable, my speech pattern will change.
It will change. Listen, last night I was in Clubhouse and I was talking to two of my CH friends. I got a funny feeling we're going to be more than that soon, doing some kind of business, but we really like jive, right? And one's from Philly. Jazz is from Philly. Natasha is from New York, Harlem, and I'm from Jersey. So we're just sister states and neighbors or whatever. And we get there, and when we're talking about business, like intense business, you hear the businesswoman come out of us. And then when we start laughing and joking, it gets straight hood.
It changes.
It is the funniest thing. And so for writers, new writers out there, make sure that you remember no one speaks monotone. Like, what is that thing when someone dies and that line goes across on
the dash?
Yeah, no one flatlines. No one gets a mode and just keeps talking like that nonstop.
Unless unless you do it for a reason. If you do it for everything you write intentionally. So I've definitely written characters who've had that monotonous one tone thing, but that was because it was very important for this point in time. They're that annoying character, but other than that, no, there's a variety of things, and even play with language. Like the play that I'm writing now, and I've been working on this play for a long time, and I have to get it done because it's the story's jumping out of me. There's one character, he does not speak with any conjunctions. He and he doesn't really like to, and he's very particular about his grammar. So he won't say isn't, he'll say it is not. And
give us a line.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Let me just look it up real quick.
I'm thinking about conjunctions and I'm like, okay, how does that
Yeah. I mean, like it's a very interesting play. It's actually, well, now I'm just going to toot my own horn. It's a play. It's right now it's entitled Next. And one of the things that I've always been fascinated by is the Bible. I come from a Roman Catholic family that is, and I myself am spiritual, but I don't necessarily hold to the Roman Catholic beliefs strictly, but I love looking at the Bible as literature. It's the most popular book.
Look, those stories save lives. I tell people all the time, if you want to read more and you want to read like stories, and listen, I'm Muslim, but I grew up in the church, so I know those stories in the Bible. And trust, there's some stories and a half.
There are, and I mean, like, that's the thing, like, we're very much taught to revere this text, and I'm not saying you shouldn't. So this isn't me coming at it in a spiritual way. This is my literature side. And I'm like, if you were to read the Bible as a story, this is some world star hip hop. There's some very
pop culture, everything, you name it.
There's some very out of pocket stuff that happens. And so looking at God and Jesus and the devil as characters, like this is some gold.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still to this day confused by the book of Job. I'm still I'm still to this day confused by Cain and Abel. And so I was very heavily inspired by the book of Job and the idea of God and Lucifer having a bet and dealing with these people. And so for me, I was the idea that God and Lucifer would do something so mundane as have a bet. Like, to me, that's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
That, my mind is like, why did they do that? Was it to prove fate? There's a whole bunch of reasons, but I started thinking, okay, like, what if who else makes bets? Businessmen,
Mm-hmm.
they're just like going about their day. So
Or how about the
these
really
are
wealthy? And just not to cut you off, but how about the really wealthy? Remember the movie Rat Race? They've done
oh my goodness, yes.
remakes. And so you have all these billionaires or multi-millionaires that just sit in a room, actually probably a really big hotel suite. I think they have darn near the whole floor, and each room is kind of set up for some part of the rat race that they've sent these people on to get to this place, to get this thing. And they're going through all of these tantrums to get there. All of the things are jumping in their way, but the millionaires are just eating and drinking and watching and just having fun. And aside from the big bet that they're all there for, there's these other little bets that's going on in between.
I loved, and there's been so many movies since that movie came out that sort of have the same premise, but so what I did was I looked at these major characters either from the Bible or other religions or mythologies. And I won't tell you, I don't want to spoil it because it will be written. But there's Lucius, there's Bill, and then there's Ethan. And those are the three main characters. And I will say this. So Bill is the vice president of this company that Lucius runs. And Ethan is the CFO. And one day Lucius comes and he's like, yeah, I'm done. I don't feel like working anymore. I'm over it. And both Bill and Ethan are like, this is not kosher. You can't you can't quit. Like that's not how this works. Lucius is very much everything dramatic that you can think of, every flare, every grand staircase entrance, he's going to take it. Ethan is the guy who sort of just ended up being good at his job and continues to do it because he is good at his job. Bill is the person who everybody thinks should be running the company, but he's very comfortable in not having the final say, but making other people say the final say for him. And so like everything that I catch myself, what I'll do is I'll write out Bill's lines, and then I'm like, okay, he wouldn't say I'm not having a good day. He would say I am not having a good day, which is completely different from me. But for example, he says it is not a matter of how you say it; it is a matter of of you saying it at all. So he's going to very much take his time. He does not state almost all of his sentences or all of his dialogue is 1 to 2 sentence per exchange. Lucius and Ethan, you're going to get much, much bigger chunks. For example, Lucius will say, it won't be the same chilling with my boys in the morning, cooler gossip, enjoying the elevator chatter while we leave, smiting food delivery persons when they pass the 20-minute mark. He'll go on. But even now looking at it, Bill says, so you can harass her, like very short. And these are nuances that I am placing. And you as a playwright, you can place these nuances in your script. And it's like, okay, I am very intentionally making Bill, quick, to the point, you know, he says what he has to say. He doesn't say more than that. But I'm leaving it up to the actor. How do they want to embody it?
Mm-hmm.
Whether he's, and I think that's the beauty of the text, because more often than not, the playwright leaves hints on how they believe their character should be within it. And if nothing else, even if somebody takes a complete 180 turn from how I believe a character is supposed to be, they're
Mm-hmm.
still going to be constrained a little bit, but in that constraint, they can go somewhere I never would have thought.
Actors, I mean, not actors, we writers put those constraints because that's how we see the character. It's a
Yeah.
blueprint, but as with any blueprint of a building, you may oftentimes put those nuts and bolts where
Yes.
they have to go so that no one strays. And it sounds to me, what Bill's your character, he sounds like he's the type of character that wants to be understood, does not want you to misunderstand what he's saying. He wants
Mm-hmm.
straight and to the point, and he wants you to get it without a shadow of doubt, no questions. You just take it. Because
Yes.
here's the difference between, and this is a little tip for new writers. Here's the difference between a character who is probably a little more relaxed and a character who is a little uptight. A character who is relaxed will, they will say, I can't, I won't, I'm not going to, right? And a character who is not so relaxed, who's a little uptight, they will say, I cannot, I will not, I do not know how I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And that shows tension, intensity, because why would you not take the time out to
Yeah.
speak shorter sentences and save your breath if you can? You know,
Yes.
it's
Bill
very,
is not that person.
yeah. He sounds like the kind of person that is more important for you to understand him. Do not misconstrue what it is that I have to say to you.
Yes. And and one of the things that I am working on, because he does not say anything beyond what he means, we do not get a lot about who he is as a person besides his work persona. Like, he's not the type of person to be like, oh man, there was a whole bunch of traffic this morning, and how that's not what he does.
Mhm.
And so what I'm doing is, because I don't want to change who he is as a character and just sort of like gone off guard of Carnage, he does have a moment where he breaks out of that because he's just so fed up. But then what I want to do is, because I don't want him to be monotonous in the fact that we don't know anything about him. Luckily, the other two characters that I've created in that play, they know him very well. So
Mhm.
I use them as tools to sort of flesh who he is out a bit.
Mhm.
Because Bill will spend time talking about other people, but only in relation to his work. So
Mhm.
he'll talk about other people in relation to his work, but he won't talk about himself.
Mhm.
Um, and so,
But see how that all comes together? It
mhm,
fits like a puzzle, right?
it
Or
does.
it fits like a glove. The things that you are setting for him go together. You didn't go reach down and where the heck else and pull something and try to put it where and then it doesn't belong and then force it. The things that you're saying about him, they go together. And then the plot, you can hear because you said he does have a moment. And
He
it,
does.
the
Yeah.
first thing that came to mind was Felix Unger. Felix Unger was, if anybody watched The Odd Couple, even though that's TV and not theater, but we're talking about,
Never guess.
if you've seen on The Odd Couple, they're total opposite. One's like a slob slouch, and the other one is very tedious and on point about
Mm-hmm.
everything from cleanliness, etc. And then, but even the guy who's the cleanest has a moment. Even the guy who's he's very like he presses all his suits, he dresses a certain way, he grooms
Mm-hmm.
himself, he speaks a certain way. Those things go together. They just naturally go together. Rarely do you see a person that speaks well, behaves well, and then dresses like a slouch. They don't. So the way you packaged it, it's right. It fits.
Yeah, you have to, and I will say this, as if you're a new writer, I think there's two things you should do. If you have other writer friends, whether they're, I mean, it's great if they're playwrights, but if they're screenwriters, if they are novelists, what have you, have them read out the script aloud to you, or
Mm-hmm.
have your actor friends, and then have people who don't care about theater or not necessarily or aren't theater people, have them read it, because you're going to get two completely different things. You're going to get two completely different things from those two groups.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the people who are not necessarily in the theater world, because you know how we theater people can be, sometimes it's like, oh my God, the symbolism, all of this is going on. Oh my God, it's so clear that this should be this color. It's so clear that this person's doing this because the symbolism, it's a callback to this play that was done in the 60s. But then a person who doesn't care about all of that is like, well, wouldn't it make sense for this person to be doing this? And you're like, why? Well, it's very clear that his favorite, it's very clear that his favorite show is, So You Think You Can Dance.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that? Oh, well, because he's always moving and it was on, you wrote this thing, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh yeah, I did write that. So,
And here's another example, just to give the audience. Now, myself and Alicia have not talked about this script that she wrote, so just make that clear. So I'm going to say something to you, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong.
okay.
Bill speaks properly. He's very exact with his words, and he does not speak in any type of slang whatsoever. He speaks to be heard and to be understood.
Mm-hmm.
You said that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said I said, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong. I said that he's probably the type of person, everything has a place and everything is in its place. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He a neat dresser?
Very much so, actually. That's one of the few stage directions, or not stage directions, character profiles that I'm very specific on.
Mm-hmm.
He always has pressed, he dresses in a full suit for work every day. He always has a waistcoat on or a vest, the male vest.
Okay, stop. Don't say anymore. Hold tight. Hold tight.
Yeah.
I just want to show the writer something. When he wears his neat and nicely pressed clothes and outfits, right? Are they mostly dark colors or earth tones?
Gray. So he only wears gray.
You see? And so I wanted to show the writers that, because it could have been, I knew it was earth tone, earth colors or whatever at best, but I knew it wasn't going to be light colors like a lime green or, you know how some men will put on a fuchsia, whatever. I knew it wasn't, because it does not fit with this person's personality. If he is so neat and if he speaks this way, he probably dresses this way, and then his color choices or palette is likely this way, right? It's either going to be dark colors or it's going to be something very, kind of laid back, nothing bright and light, because he is very particular about everything. And light colors is very free spirited. It's very, lively, just trying to be, enjoy the world and let some color in your life. And this guy does not sound like that at all. It's like, let me control everything.
Yes. Even though he's second in command, he's second command of hell, basically. He does not want to draw attention to himself. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very important to pick up on those things. However, I will say, as a writer, if for some reason you are writing a character like I am, and you for some reason feel like he should be dressed in yellows or teals or blues, something bright, why? Mm-hmm. And think about that, and what about that character is drawing you to that, and show it, because then, not saying that Bill isn't an interesting character profile, but he would definitely be a different character if he was coming in with a full-on Alexander McQueen extreme avant-garde piece every day. He would be a completely different character. Mm-hmm. So that would make for an interesting choice. So again, always be very intentional. I want him to be very I want him to blend into the background when he needs to, and that's how he likes it, because he can control things. He can manipulate people better that way, as opposed to somebody else who dresses in reds and yellows and oranges and these very vibrant colors. He's purposely doing that because he's the attention seeker. That's what he likes.
But and also, but he seems like the attention seeker through action, not through I'm going to throw on a bright red suit because I'm from hell. And see what happens with some people. They do it because they've seen someone else do it, but you have to consider everything. In the comedy show, you may see, I forgot the one with Adam Sandler when they were from hell or whatever. Was it Adam Sandler or
Little Nicky?
Yes, Little Nicky. And so, yeah, they used the bright colors and because it was a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
So with different genres, you do different things. And guess what? Different genres, certain things are expected.
Mm-hmm.
You know, comedy, we expect you to go above and beyond and do extra. In theater, we'll take it. In theater, we'll even take that in comedy of the absurd because it's absurd. But when you have a genre that is like drama or a thriller or things like that, then the spectacle is not the top. It's not the first most key important thing. Certain things, some like a thriller, the plot is likely the first thing, right? That we need to tackle and make sure the audience gets. There's a plot happening here. If it's a thriller or a mystery or something, if it's I don't want to venture off the topic, but if it's a drama, then it may be more the character. And that's what yours sounds like. It's the character. And so now we have to start thinking about, okay, what is the spectacle like for this character?
Yeah, well, that's the one thing. Like there's a lot going on this. I guess I would definitely firmly put this play in comedy. Not necessarily comedy of the absurd, but I mean, this is an experimental piece for me because it's something that I haven't done before. I usually base almost all of my plays are very realistic. They're based in reality, even if they are comedies.
Is this a comedy? Is it a dark comedy?
It is a dark comedy. It is a dark comedy.
That makes a difference too.
Yes.
Because now it's not slapstick, right?
No, it's very much, I don't know. I I haven't had anyone read it yet. But it is, I wrote another short play where this man stole toilets, and a lot of people were like, that's absurd. I'm like, no, I actually met a man who told me that he steals toilets and toilet seats.
Wow.
So like, so I'm really excited about this piece, but it's stretching what I typically do. And there was no reason for me to start writing like this other than the fact that I had the story, and I feel like this is the best way for me to convey the story. And I think that as not just as a playwright or as an actress, but as an artist, you have a feeling, an emotion, a story that you want to be heard and interpreted by other people. And it's just my job as an artist to be that conduit for other people. And this just, a dark comedy full-length piece is literally just sort of me answering my own question of like, what would it be like if all the major figures from the Bible were businessmen in today's society?
They are. They are the big tycoons, and they are. I have a running joke I was just talking about last night. I said, for those of you who are fans of Terminator, I said, me and my son have a running joke about how Amazon is Skynet. Well, no, Amazon will be Skynet because they're dipping in everything. So yeah. So what you said is right on point. So what I want to do now, all right, so I took that little breath just now. I'm not going to pause it, but I took that little breath just now for me to be able to cut. We started doing more of the podcast, which is cool because it flowed naturally. And so what I want to do now is double back and get some of the questions. And when I edit, I'll just kind of patch it up a little bit.
Sure.
All right, so we're getting ready to dive right back in. So let me ask you, how do you think you've grown as an actor?
Oh my, I've lived more. From goodness, I guess from when 2015 was when we first met, I believe. 2015 sounds about right.
Was it 15 or 14? One of those.
One of those, but it's been over 5 years.
Mhm.
I've lived more in those 5 years. I've experienced more, and I've met more people. And what that's allowed me to do is for me to realize that there's so much more I don't know, and there's so much more that I haven't experienced.
Mm.
And using that lack of knowledge makes me want to go and do different things and try different things. One of the things that I have, and I still continue to this day to struggle with, is, of course, body image. I feel like a lot of people do struggle with that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that sort of hit me, I want to say pretty recently, as you've noticed, I've been putting up a lot more videos, more pictures, which is something that, like, as an actress, even though it's really good networking, it's really good for us to be out there.
Mhm.
I hate it doing because I don't necessarily, and even now, I do not like putting my body out there, even though that's what I do as an actress. It's like, here's my body, do with it what you want. But I realize that I'm holding myself back from potentials, from opportunities. And am I opening myself up and becoming a lot more vulnerable? Am I opening myself up for criticism? Absolutely. I know that. But I also know that if I continue to try and um, block a huge part of myself, pun intended, I'm not doing myself any any favors. And seeing people like Chrissy Metz and Lizzo and go out there and just do what they want to do and do what they love doing. It's like, I can do that too. I love doing it. And there's very few things in this world that I'll say I'm good at with confidence, but I am good at acting. I am.
You are.
Thank you. I'm not saying I'm the best, and I'm not saying, give me a Tony, but I am saying this is something I actually am very confident in. And so me putting myself out there for me is a way of making myself more vulnerable, as well as empowering myself. Because if I'm judging myself when I get a character, that puts me in a loop. That makes me that limits my mind, because it's like, again, like, I remember, I don't know if what I said before, it's like, there's a difference between what I wouldn't do and what I believe the character wouldn't do. And a lot of times I would cross that and I would get that mixed up. And that limited my potential to be able to embody a character. By I'm putting myself more and more out there, so that, like, when I do characters and when I do, X, Y, and Z, I'm able to give myself a little bit more over to that person, so I can do that character justice.
You've been listening to I'm Just Saying with Andrea and friends. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to share, because sharing is caring. Like, comment. Also, if you never want to miss an episode, subscribe, baby.